Well, as the old song from, I think, the 70s or something said, it's the final countdown. From the time I'm recording here, it's about 48 hours before Daniel, our son Daniel, and myself will be on the road to Nashville, or actually Franklin, going from Franklin, North Carolina to Franklin, Tennessee. Okay, but we'll be at the Revive Conference and speaking to the youth. To say that this year there is a kind of a heaviness that I'm feeling is really an understatement. So I just really feel like that we have an opportunity, and this is not about me. It's not about my great speaking ability. It's not about Daniel or our worship team and their amazing ability to lead worship. This is about that our young people must have a move of the Father, something that they can see the reality, the revelation of who He is, beyond just dance and things like this. It's becoming more and more apparent to me, and this is not to judge anyone, any of the teachers, congregations, anybody out there, but it's something that unless we ask ourselves the hard questions, we're never able to come up with true answers that can bring forth the right answer. Okay, so asking yourself a difficult question is the beginning of a road to finding the true answers. And my question that I'm asking these days is this: have our youth been raised for, and again, this is not judgmental, just an overstatement here, have they been raised in just another religious system that has taught a different day, a different diet, but in the end it's just another religious system that is void of the presence and power of the Almighty, of their Creator? So those are just some things that are on my mind, and people can agree, disagree, whatever they'd like to do with that. If those of you that I of course record on Tuesdays and this is released on Thursdays, I know a lot of you do not listen until maybe Friday night or Saturday. For those that might catch a little early, just to give you the schedule of what I'm going to be doing, and I do this for asking you for your prayers during this time specifically. I will be speaking to the youth. This is ages 12 to 19, I believe. I will be speaking to them on Thursday from 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock. That will be in the Central Time, of course. I will be speaking to the adults. That's my penance for being able to speak to the youth and young people. I'll be speaking to the adults at 10:30 to 11:30, and of course you can also go to Revive HRN. Type in Revive 2022, a couple different ways, and this is available on live stream also. And then on Friday afternoon, we'll be doing our first session with the young adults. This is ages 20 to 29. That'll be from 1 to 3:15. And then on Shabbat from 3 to 5 o'clock will be my second and last session on with the young adults. I also have Mike, I believe the last name is Farley, will be working with the youth in 2 more sessions. So if you have a moment to call out his name, I would appreciate that also. I look forward to a good report next week. I look forward to a great report next week of the things that have gone on there. Side note, before we get into the Book of Devarim, I received a call last week from a good friend, David Altman. David's a part of B'nai Yosef. He's also has taken over the logistics of Key of David, which is the publishing company that Angus and Batia Wooten began many years ago. Batia, of course, is the one who wrote the book "Who is Israel?", Mama's Torah, a number of other books that Batia has released, and Angus was the one that was kind of the out front with some of the conferences, and the two of them began MIA, Messianic Israel Alliance, many years ago. That was the starting point of what is now Revive. Tragedy is that a lot of people don't understand the history, okay? And so Angus Wooten was a colonel, I believe Air Force or Army, one of the two. I'd hate to get that wrong and see him later on, but he was a colonel, and he was a great man. Angus got dementia later on in life, was in a nursing home for a while, and passed away. It's been a number of years ago. Miss Batia still continues on, but she has some needs right now, some financial needs. I won't go really into the specifics of that, but Batia is one of the pioneers. Many of us that are here today don't even realize that the reason we're here is because of the writings of Batia Wooten. So if you're on Facebook and you happen to not catch it's not a GoFundMe, I can't remember what it is that David set up, but it takes zero out. So every dime that goes in goes out and goes to the person. If you would like to go to Facebook there, you can do so, and I'd be glad to give you that link. I can send you a direct link if you'll email me, and you can give via credit card. If all of those things are not within your scope of things, and we'd just like to give a donation to Batia, you could also send that to our office. Make it out to us. We'll pass it on. Make it out to her. We'll pass it on. Whatever you want to do. But the need's about $13,000. As of the moment I'm recording now, we're over halfway there, which she had a bill that was going to be due next week. That's taken care of. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. If maybe you're not able to give in August, maybe you can next month, something. Along with that is, of course, we have an Israel tour coming up in 90 days. And so if you're wanting to send some money to Israel and a Sukkot offering, be more than honored to take that. All right. With all of that being said, let's go to the Book of Devarim. And speaking of history, okay, this is something that's a reality that we see in our culture today, a rewriting of history, or at least an attempt to rewrite history. And I got to tell you, they're doing a pretty good job of it, because those who desire to rewrite history have an agenda. Okay, they have an agenda that is behind all of this. And the tearing down of statues that we've seen and the rewriting of history books, he who wins writes history. But then after that victory is over, those that may have lost the battle along the way or have different agendas will come in and try to rewrite. And this is something that in the United States, it didn't just happen a few years ago. This did not happen in the year 2020. But the rewriting of history has been something that, if you research it, goes back about 100 years now, actually, the best I can tell. You call it a conspiracy theory if you want to, but the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth used to be about 6 months. Now it's more like 6 weeks, I think. Has been a concerted effort by people to rewrite history, and those who didn't know history are the ones that are vulnerable. I was not real engaged in school. Probably the one subject that I wish that I had spent more time and attention on is history. I remember going to a teacher, a history teacher, one day, and saying to them, "So tell me, why do I need to know this?" Now, to me, that's just my personality. Okay, I don't do things just because you tell me to. I don't put any energy in that. Now, if you will give me a reason to do something, I'll put everything that I have behind it. So this one teacher, and I don't remember who it was or what year it was, but I do remember the moment in time. When I went to this teacher and said, "Now tell me, why do I need to know these things?" Their response to me was, "Because I told you to." They had the opportunity at that moment to literally set a direction in my life. And quite honestly, they did. They did set a direction in my life, one that would later on be detrimental, because I would have to go back and find out a lot of things of history that I didn't know. That teacher could have said, "Well, let's sit down and let's discuss how history repeats itself, and those that don't know history are destined to go this direction, and those who do, this is probably one of the greatest pieces of knowledge that we can have in our life is history." That's why people go back and they check on Ancestry.com and they look at genealogies and all these kind of things, because they want to know their history. And if we understand that, then we can kind of figure out some things about our life. But a person that doesn't know where they came from, doesn't know what they've gone through to get there, or what others have gone through to get to where they're at, they're just kind of floating around all over the place with no clear direction. Now, our past, I will say this, our past, our history, can be a springboard to our future, or it can be an anchor to our present. One of the two. So when you walk into this thought of understanding our history, where we came from, do so with such an idea. Okay, this is going to teach me how to move forward in life, not how to hold me in this place in life and make excuses for what we're doing. Moshe is kind of doing the same thing with the Hebrews that are on the eastern shore of the Yarden, the Jordan River. We talked last week how how Reuben, Gad, half the tribe of Manasseh, would end up staying over on that side. Now, the way that I see it, were they in Israel? Yes, they were in the promised land. They were in the biblical borders of Israel. So they had, in a way, every right to go to Moshe to make this request, because they really were there, were they not? Well, they were, but they were ahead of schedule. Let's kind of put it that way. Joshua had been told, you're to go across the Yarden, and then you are to take this section of land, which will later be this section of land, a little larger. Those of you that are listening by audio have no idea what I just did. So he gives us what we can take at the moment until we're ready to take more. This is a concept for an impatient generation today that wants everything. All right, people get out of school, get out of college, whatever, and expect to have 2 cars in the garage, a garage, which actually is a 3-car garage now, a huge house, a huge income, and all these things, and wonder why their life is ruined after a while, because they didn't learn how to take care of the small things in life. So if we're praying for an expanse of our borders, or a expanding of the tent pegs as Jabez did, make sure that we're taking care of what we have now. So very simple. If you can't take care of a 1-bedroom apartment, don't pray for a 10-bedroom house. Learn how to take care of the 1-bedroom apartment. Reuben, Gad, they wanted to take care of everything instead of going and taking care and learning how to accept. It's like a garden. If you can't take care of a 10 by 10 garden, don't go buy a 100-acre farm. Okay, just kind of thinking there. Now, Devarim, all right, is a plural. It's a masculine plural of the word devar, which is the word words. Devar would be word, Devarim, words. And this is it's a fascinating word to me. It is a dalet, a bait, and a resh. Dalet is a door, a bait, we should know that one, is a house, and resh is the head. And so we see this word as the picture of it. It is a door to the head of the house, or the house, which is the head house. It is the house of the dwelling, the door to the dwelling of the head of the house. We can look at it a number of different ways, I guess it would be. But the root word of this is also devar, and it goes to a couple different places. First of all, the word devarim that we see right here, the first place that is used in Scripture is in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 11, verse 1, which is that the world, everyone spoke the same language. Okay, they had different dialects, but everyone was speaking the same word, the same language to one another. But then if we look at the root of this word of devarim, devar, we see that the first time that this is used is Genesis, Bereshit chapter 8, verse 15, when Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh speaks to Noah, the devar that came to Noach. So what do we see there? What's the picture of going back to this, of the word devarim, devar, and the root word? Well, it's kind of to me it's kind of an interesting play, in that in history, going back to the time of the Tower of Babel here that we see, going back to the days of Noach, that there's always going to be many voices. There's always going to be a language of the people. But there's also going to be a voice of the Almighty at the root. In the midst of the voices, you're going to find the voice. And that is should I say, extremely important message for us today, that there are voices. I mean, I've talked about this so many times, YouTube and this tube and the other tube, and the emails that you get of all of the stuff that's going on in the world today. Finding the voice of the Almighty. Let's say it a little different way. In the midst of the sea of voices, finding out which voice is important. What's the important voice? What's the voice that will give us that forward movement? And how many voices are there that are just kind of wanting to toss us to and fro over the earth today? Devarim begins with a message to us of learning to hear His voice in the midst of all the voices. Now, there's a kind of a controversial concept to the book of Devarim. It's found, David Stern translates it in verse 5, "There beyond the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moshe took it upon himself to expound this Torah and said," the question has been, as was with the spies going into Canaan, was this the people's the people's idea, the spies specifically? Was it a breakdown in the leadership of Moshe? Was it something of the Almighty? It appears to me that it was the idea of the people. Now, with that, we look at the book of Devarim and consider: is this book, should we have in the scheme of things, would the Torah have been sufficient had it been 4 books? And what's the purpose? What's the purpose of the book of Devarim? Did David Stern get it right when he said that Moshe took it upon himself to do this? Or is he truly under the direction of the Almighty? Well, I'm going to go with the latter on that one, that no matter what, I'm going to go with that the book of Devarim is just as much a part of the Torah as the other 4 books, and is of equal importance. In fact, it is the book that's the summary. So Moshe, once again, we get a bit of an insight into the person of who he is. The first thing that he does when he's given the sentence of not entering into the land of promise is he says, there's got to be a successor. Raise up someone who can take my place. Next on his agenda is the book of Devarim, and standing in front of the people, giving them a summary of everything that's happened. What is Moshe doing here? He is giving them the history. He's making sure that everyone within his hearing, remember that, though there are people in the in his congregation now, the Kahal, the tribes, there's the maximum age right now is about 60 there, because everyone of age 20 or older died in the wilderness. So, these are the old guys, are 60 years old. But is he considering the possibility that maybe some of those that died in the wilderness did not take it upon themselves to give an accurate account of the history of what had happened up until that point? Is it possible that he's thinking, well, those we have some of the rebels, some of the relatives of Korach, and those that sprang up after Korach, and the relatives of the guy that was caught gathering sticks, gathering wood on Shabbat. Maybe they kind of glossed over some of these things. So Moshe wants to give at least a good overall account of the history of the people, of where they came from, of where they're going, and also give them a summary of the instructions. And so we could look at Devarim as this summary. Now, I've been accused of people. In fact, I told my son-in-law the other day, we were talking about nicknames that people get. He's a motorcycle racer, and he said that it's kind of a you're in the club when somebody gives you a nickname. Okay, so I told him that I was in Oklahoma a number of years ago, and one of the people that was there gave me Indian, though they're not Native American. They decided to give me a Native American nickname, and it was Chief Longwind. My son-in-law thought that was hilarious, and maybe I've been able to live up to that occasionally. But Moshe's got 34 chapters of his final message. So for those of you that have thought for once in a while that I'm a little long-winded, give me a break, okay? Moshe, I think, has me beat by at least a few chapters. He tells them a very interesting verse, and actually I'm going to give you a little insight into Friday morning's message at Revive. Interesting enough that this is what I've been planning to do for some time, not looking forward to what it was going to be at Revive, but it's verse 6, yeah, one more verse. Yudhevave spoke to us in Horeb. He said, you have lived long enough by this mountain. Turn, get moving, and go to the hill country of the Amorite and all the places near, and it ends up saying, in the land of Canaan, and go and take possession. You've lived around this mountain long enough. Now, this is Mount Sinai, okay? This is, it says in Horeb, it's Mount, I believe it's Mount Sinai, and they have encamped around this mountain. This is the mountain of the divine revelation. It's the mountain in which they heard the shofars, the voice of the shofar. They heard the thunders. They saw the lightning. They saw the smoke. I mean, this to us would be the height of revival, an outpouring of the Almighty that is in many ways immeasurable. I mean, you know, this is it. You've brought us out of Egypt, and you've brought us to this mountain, and you've given us this divine revelation. Well, this must be the camping place. You know, this must be where we need to be, where we need to stay. This is the revelation that is the reason that you brought us out of Egypt. Let's camp here. And he says to them, you've camped here long enough. See, Mount Sinai was not their destination. Mount Sinai was their destination for the revelation for their destination. It was a needed stopping point along the way. But Mount Sinai was not to be their final destination. It was a stopping place, a stop off. It was a rest area in order for them to take a good look at the map. Okay, I know that's kind of ancient these days to do something like that, but they needed to learn. They needed to learn about their destination, about the one who had delivered them, about the Redeemer. All of these things was to happen at Mount Sinai, but it was not to be considered a final destination. Because what happens? What happens when the Torah becomes our final destination? I think that there's some things that those of us that have been around this for a while might see the possibility that he could be speaking the same thing to us today. Because the vast majority of us that have been around for a while came out of churches. And then we were brought to this thing called the Torah to learn a different way of life. But has it been that instead of it being a stopping place, it became a destination? When you and I do not continue to move forward to the destination that Yah has for us, there will be some things that happen. It is possible to become complacent. When you camp somewhere and it was supposed to be a stopping place, and it became a stopping place, a final destination, then even the message that was given, as wonderful as it may have been, may cause you to be complacent. I go back to the Brownsville revival, of which I was very much a part of as far as attending that, and ended up getting to know many of the leadership of Brownsville revival. There was an introduction at Brownsville of the Torah. Many people go back into the 1990s, late 1990s, and say that that was the first time they ever heard a shofar. But overall, the main leadership did not see that this was not the end. This was just a stopping place. This was a stop in the journey. Instead, it became a destination. And in the midst of that, you can become complacent. You can become routine in what you do. You can become familiar to the point that the revelation becomes contemptible. Go to the book of Mark, chapter 6. Look at the beginning of Mark. Look at the end of Mark. And what do we see there? That in the beginning of the book of Mark, Yeshua could do, it says he could do very little. He taught and he healed a few sick people. Why? Because of the attitude of the people. This is just the person from Nazareth. This is just the builder, the farmer. He's just one of us. He's just one of the boys. And, he's got some good teaching and stuff, and I know he's done a few miracles, but isn't that just the son of Joseph and Miriam? I mean, he was raised with us, and he went to school with my children, and the complacency, the familiarity, actually in the end bred contempt. We compare that to the end of Mark chapter 6, that he went across the river, across the Jordan, over to the eastern shore of the Jordan River upon the north, and it says he healed everyone that came to him. What's the difference? The difference is not Yeshua. The difference is not the healing power. The difference is not the word that he was speaking. The difference is the attitude of the people, because they had allowed that which was in their midst to become familiar and even contemptible, and therefore they missed out. When you camp in the wrong place too long, you can become bored. And I have to ask this question. I have to ask this of question myself occasionally. Have I been in this walk so long that I'm bored with it? That's one of those stinging questions, is it not? Are we bored? Is it time to move on? Is it time to look at these words and say, it's time to move forward? Actually, it's specific. He said, turn north. Now, what is north of Horeb, of Mount Sinai? It is the land of Israel. Okay, well, once again, we come back to this subject of Israel. I was asked this past Shabbat by someone. You talk about Israel a lot, but there's no way for me to move to Israel. There's no way for me to go to Israel. I mean, unless you have specific documentation, which most of us don't have, unless you are willing to convert to Judaism, which I'm not willing to do, nothing against Judaism per se, but in order for me to convert to Judaism, I would have to make a declaration of denial of Yeshua, the one who has brought me to this family called Israel. That ain't happening. Okay, that's not on the table. So the question was valid, and the question has a very, I think, complicated yet maybe simple answer. That no, I can't move to Israel. It's not a possibility right now. I don't know Hebrew. I don't have the income, savings, abilities. I mean, the list goes on at this moment in time. What could keep me from there? But nothing can keep my spiritual man from being there. Okay, they can even during COVID. Okay, they could close the borders to my physical man, but they couldn't close the borders to my spiritual man. They couldn't close the borders to me communicating with those in Israel who I know. They did not close the borders to be able to give unto Israel and the people that are there. They could not close the borders to my prayer for the shalom of Jerusalem. They could not close the borders to my daily reciting of the Shema at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. They could not close those borders. Yes, the borders may be closed to my physical man, but the borders are not closed to my spiritual man. The desire to be in the land, the desire for the temple to be rebuilt in whatever way that is going to be, the desire for Messiah himself to be seated upon that throne, the desire for the revelation of the Torah to go forth from Jerusalem, his word from Mount Zion, the desire for there to be shalom, peace upon this earth. Those things are the driving. So though my physical man may be stuck at Horeb, my spiritual man is walking toward the destination, which is Israel. Now, as we go through some of these verses, I'm not going to go into all of them. You can do that on your own. But it appears, it sounds like that Moshe is talking to the dead, okay? When he tells them, we went here, we went there, we did these things. There's not most of the people that are there, some of them don't even remember all this stuff. So it appears that Moshe is kind of addressing those who were the failures and who ended up as bird food in the wilderness. But in doing so, he's speaking in speaking to those, or speaking at, maybe I kind of trying to figure out the way to say this, speaking about those, there you go, speaking about those that died, he's giving a lesson to the living. Think about that one for a moment. In speaking about those who died, he's giving a lesson to the living of how not to make the same error that their ancestors made. I think this is the words of Shaul in 2 Corinthians, of these things are given to us as prehistoric events in order that we may learn from these things. So Moshe gives the history about those who have died so that the living, those that would enter into the land, will not be as likely to repeat the history and therefore make the same mistakes. This is the reason why we should not just skim over the Book of Devarim too fast, but learn the lesson which is the summary of all that has happened up until that point in time. In chapter 2, we're going to go to verse 25. Today I will start putting the fear and dread of you into all the peoples under heaven, so that the mere mention of your name will make them quake and tremble before you. Look forward to a day in which the powers of this world tremble at the very mention. Today it appears that the demonic powers of this world are winning. It appears. I do not go by appearance, so it's really kind of I know that they're not, because the Almighty is using every one of these people as pawns. That's all they are, is pawns. Pawns in His hand. He's moving them around on the chessboard. This week we see, Pelosi, is she going to go to Taiwan or not? And will this cause a war with China? And will this happen and that happen and the other thing happen? These people are just on the world stage. Consider that their importance in their own mind is about as irrelevant as you can have, because all it is the Father moving them around for His good and for His purposes and for His word to come to pass. There comes a day in which those that follow the true gospel, which, by the way, the true gospel has 4 things. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. The true gospel is about the Redeemer, the Messiah. It is about the Torah that comes forth. It is about the kingdom. It is about the land of Israel. Without one of those items, you don't have the true gospel. You only have a portion of the gospel. So those of us that are studying, those of us that are desiring to live the complete gospel in this day, expect there to be some tension. As we get closer to the beginning, notice I didn't say the end. As we get closer to the beginning of the kingdom, expect there to be some tension between those that are not following Him and those that are. I read a quote from someone yesterday that said something about this, like this, that, and I loosely quoted, I didn't get it exactly, but don't be surprised when the spirit in you disrupts the demons in others. Okay? Really loosely quoted there. So if you are walking in His Spirit, don't be surprised when not everybody likes you, because the demons, the demonic voices that they are following is in direct opposition to the voice and person that you are following, and the two are in conflict. There's no way for there to be that lack of tension there. So if you see at times that there is tension between you and someone that's not following the Almighty, be thankful for that. Don't run from it. That's a moment in time. Now I want to finish out with this in chapter 3, verse 22. And it says this: also at that time I gave this order to Joshua, your eyes have seen everything that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, has done to these 2 kings. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will do the same to all the kingdoms you encounter when you cross over. Don't be afraid of them, because Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, will fight on your behalf. Chapter 3, verse 25, or chapter 2, verse 25, is more about that there is a fear that comes from the heavens. The fear that comes from the heavens for those who are walking in obedience to the heavens. Okay, let me go back and rephrase that a little bit. The fear that comes from the heavenly realm and the one of the heavenly realm will come upon, should not affect, and I know it says the fear of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is the beginning of wisdom, but we're talking about a different kind of fear. That our fear is a reverent fear, not a dreadful fear. Okay, so we need to embrace a reverent fear of Him who is in the heavens, but not a dreadful fear of He who is in the heavens. And if we will do that, then we will not embrace the fear of those that are operating in the earthly realm. If I have an appropriate and balanced godly fear, reverent fear of the heavenly realm, then I will not fear that which is in the earthly realm. Why is that? Well, let me close out with a couple of verses here. I'm going to go over to Matthew. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28 is the first one I want to read. Matthew 10 is still in this book. I just got to get over there to it. Matthew 10, 28. Do not fear those who kill the body, but are powerless to kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in Gehenna. Aren't 2 sparrows sold for next to nothing? 2 for an assarion? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground without the Father's consent. For you, as for you, every hair on your head has been counted. So do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Verse 31. Do not be afraid of that which can only kill the body. I mean, the truth is, for those of us that have received Messiah, those of us that have been redeemed, those of us that are walking out with our limited amount of understanding, the words that He has given to us, as someone used to say many years ago, what can they threaten you with? Eternity? Now, I'm not saying that I'm, just kind of really looking forward to that tomorrow or something. There's still life to be lived here. But in the end, what can they threaten you with? I know the pain and all that stuff that could, happen, but in the end, what can they threaten you with? The loss of your physical being? But there's not a demonic force. There's not a physical force upon this earth who can separate us from the love of the Almighty. Can powers, can principalities, can rulers of this age, can rulers of darkness, can any of that separate us from Him? The answer is astounding no. They can separate us from our physical being, but our fear should never be of that. So for all the headlines, consider the headline that reads, "We serve the one who has control over our very being, our eternal being." That's where I'm going to end. Okay. Thank you for your prayers this week for Revive, for the different meetings for the youth and young adults. And like I said, I look forward to an incredible report next week coming up of this. So until then, Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing, see you again next week. And until then, be strong. Be strong in the one that has total control over everything that's going on in our lives. That's really all we need to do, right? Till next week.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom.